2024 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. I'm Candace Breyer, Chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a 9-person volunteer board nominated by the mayor and approved by City Council. First, we will hear from Planning Services, represented by John Barrett. Then the applicant or their representative will make their presentation. Applicants will have 5 minutes in which to make their presentation. Staff will keep time and will announce when 30 seconds are remaining. Public comment is available in person or remotely. We will first call on individuals present to address the board, then remote participants. To speak during a public hearing or during public comment remotely, press star 9 if listening by phone, or use the raise hand feature if viewing through the web link. For phone access, call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 938-1648-1007. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand using the last 3 digits of their phone number or by name if available for those accessing through the web link. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds. We may ask questions of either the city or the applicant. We will acknowledge any written comments received by the board. We will allow an appearing party to express their support or objections. The board will then discuss the appeal and formulate a motion to approve the appeal. 5 affirmative votes of the board will be necessary for an appeal to be granted. Finally, any qualified party who is aggrieved by a decision of the board can appeal that decision to the Washtenaw County Circuit Court on a timely basis. Roll call. Candace Breyer, I am here. Todd Grant.
I am here.
Dave DeVarty.
DeVarty here.
Chris Madigan. Julie Weatherby.
Here.
Mike Daniel.
Here.
Dharma Ekman.
Here.
Christina Glusak. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a quorum. Moving on to approval of the agenda, I will note quickly that the first item we have, 195 North Maple Road, has been postponed at the request of the applicant, so we will still hold a public hearing tonight if there's anyone that wishes to speak on that petition. But then when and if that comes back to us, we'll have another public hearing at that time. We won't be making any decisions or having any discussion regarding that petition this evening. And then the third item we have under public hearings tonight, 2845 South State Street, I will be recusing myself from that petition, so Todd will be taking over that one.
And just to let the applicant know that we will be down to 5 board members at that time, and to secure the variance approval, you'll need all 5 affirmative votes in your favor, 5 out of 5. So it's up to the applicant whether they choose to move forward or want to table it to the next meeting, or postpone it to the next meeting. And at that time, when your petition is called, you can let us know your decision at that time.
All right, all of that said, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Julie. Support?
Support.
We have support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to minutes, we have minutes from the May 22nd, 2024 ZBA meeting. Are there any questions, comments, corrections on those minutes? Not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Dharma. Second?
Support.
Thank you, Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the first public hearing, petition ZBA 24-0021, 195 North Maple Road. As I noted, the applicant has requested to be postponed, so if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, you may do so now. No callers? All right, with that, the public hearing's closed, and we will move on. Petition ZBA 24-0022, 618 Stratford Drive. John?
Good evening, I'm John Barrett, zoning coordinator for the city of Ann Arbor. ZBA 24-0022, located at 618 Stratford Drive. Ventures Design, representing the property owner, is seeking a 10-foot variance from section 5.18.5, averaging an established front building line. The owners are proposing to construct a pool in the average front setback. The established average front setback is 40 feet, and a variance is being sought to allow for the construction to take place in the front setback area. The property is zoned R1B, Single Family Dwelling District. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of the Hill Street and Avon Road intersection in the Angel neighborhood. The home was built in 1950 and is approximately 2,804 square feet in size. The lot comprises 18,730 square feet in area. The owners are proposing to construct a crescent-shaped pool behind the home in the average front setback. The pool will be surrounded by a 4-foot-tall aluminum fence. If you'll turn your attention to the monitors, you'll see that the first slide is the area zoning map showing the subject property highlighted in blue in the center of the screen. And the next slide is the area map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo. You see the subject property and how it fronts on Stratford Drive, Avon Road, and Hill Street. Everyone should be familiar with this property. It was here a couple months ago, and the owners are requesting to build this new pool on the back side of their house, but of course, per zoning, it's in the front setback due to the fact that the property fronts public right-of-way, basically all the way around except the right side yard. The next slide shows the survey that was submitted with the application. And the next slide is a site plan that was submitted by the owner showing the 30-foot distance from the property line to the pool in several different sections of the yard. And also there's an arc length of 68 feet for the pool. This is a conceptual design of what the finished construction will look like. Just another view of the pool from the yard and looking at the house. More conceptual designs of what the finished product will look like. These are the photos that took place at the inspection of the property. You see the front of the house. This is looking down the driveway towards the, or down the front yard towards Avon and Hill Street intersection. This is looking up the driveway at the garage of the house. This is looking towards the house from the Avon Road, Hill Street intersection towards the house. Looking out towards the road, the street from the backyard. This is a photo of the intersection in the back/front yard with vegetation. Another perspective of the property from the intersection with the vegetated buffer in place. I will let the owners respond to these. I believe they're in your packet as well in the staff report. There's the answers to their questions, and that's their responses to why addressing practical difficulty and substantial justice, the extraordinary circumstances, public safety and welfare, impact on surrounding neighborhoods, and they can address those concerns and the findings of facts. That concludes my presentation. I will take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, John. Questions? Todd?
So the end of the staff report mentions that if it weren't for the averaging rule, that this pool would meet the 30-foot setbacks for the zoning area. Correct? It says what they assert is that if it weren't for an averaging rule, they're required to have the pool 30 feet back from the lot line. I just want to confirm.
No, the property is zoned R1B and would have a 40-foot setback.
Oh, okay, so regardless of the averaging rule, they still have to meet 40 feet.
They don't have to meet 40 feet because they don't have a rear yard. They have a front yard, and the average of the front yard is 40 feet.
Okay.
But if this was in a perfectly square lot
Yes.
with one front yard, two side yards, and a rear yard, the rear yard would be 40 feet.
Okay. Right.
But we don't have that scenario. We have three
I
front
understand.
yards and
So
one
there's
side yard.
So it's incorrect to say a setback of 30 feet, that's not really allowed in the area. They have to meet the 40 foot. Because sometimes we have situations where the averaging rule trips the person, but it weren't for averaging, they would clearly meet the setback. This is not this case.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the petitioner is here, you can come forward, state your name for the record, sign in, you'll have 5 minutes.
Brandon Bertrand. Do I have to write the rest of this appeal stuff down? I don't.
No, just your name and address, sir.
Okay. All right, cool. I'll start, I apologize, I don't know the 30-foot thing. Was that something we wrote in there? I don't know where that came.
There was an applicant response to the question.
Okay. Yeah, anyway, as mentioned with all this, like there's what we're trying to do is build a permitted use structure, a swimming pool in the backyard of a home. Extreme difficulties with the fact that there's 0 backyard, there's 3 front yards and 1 side yard, which make it impossible to construct the permitted use structure while complying with the zoning ordinances. Unique circumstances, we also have to meet distances away from the home as well, per zoning and general state building code as well, to be able to build a swimming pool. They like to have pools away from a house so people don't jump off roofs into the pool, stuff like that. So that makes it a little bit difficult. If we could bring it right next to the house, we certainly would. Unfortunately, that probably wouldn't go well with insurance companies as well. So anyway, we're trying to fit this pool within very tight parameters. The average, when you talk to most pool builders, the average pool size people say is about 800 square feet. This is substantially smaller than that, significantly small in terms of square footage, although it is long. They're hoping to be able to use it for exercise, swim laps and stuff like that. Ideally, a linear shape would be better for that, but we don't have that option here. So again, the intent of the design here is to create a space, build a permitted use structure that, you know, we would hope could conform to the zoning ordinances, but we're having difficulty. We're hoping if there's some guidance that we can get from it, from you guys, you know, we're more than willing to take it. Another difficulty, elevations. So the elevations make it required to really have a deck to come out of the back of the property as well, just because we're so high. So that kind of screws that corner up over on the far side. But the setback of the setback, because it's the front yard setback of 40 feet is really what's kind of doing us in here. It's making it impossible. So that's really why we're requesting a variance here. In terms of impact of the surrounding neighborhood, substantial justice. There's other people that have swimming pools in the area. A lot of people have homes that don't have 3 front yards. It's an extremely uncommon property. So we're asking the board to consider that as well. I don't know if there's anything else that I can really add to that aside from just putting in a bunch of minutia in here. So I guess, you know, I'd be more than happy to answer questions in regards to it. Again, our intent here is to be able to figure out a resolution so they could have a swimming pool, whatever that may be. I just want to reiterate that it is a permitted use structure, and the reason that we're here is because cases when someone is unable to conform with the zoning bylaws to get something that's permitted use. So I think this is a great circumstance considering the lot, and I hope you guys are willing to consider that and help us think through it and find a solution here.
Thank
So
you.
sorry.
Okay.
I'll speak on the question that you had, Todd, and just clarify that. So if you read, it says the variance, which should, it should, if granted, will allow the pool to be built in the rear of the property, which it's considered their rear because it's their backyard from the rear of their house, and still maintain a setback of 30 feet from the quote-unquote front property lines.
Right. Understood.
So that's, they didn't say that the rear setback was 30. They just said if this variance is granted, there'll still be a 30-foot setback from that front street rather than 40.
Yep.
Does that clear it up?
Yep,
Okay,
very
cool.
well.
All right.
Did you have a question for the petitioner? Okay. Any questions for the petitioner? Todd?
Brandon, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
Bertrand.
What is it?
Bertrand.
Bertrand.
Yeah.
So tell me about the other pools in the neighborhood. And I say that this is a very nice property. It's in the Hill Street neighborhood of Geddes. It's a very nice neighborhood. So somebody else has a pool, but it's not. This is not Phoenix, Arizona. You know, where everybody has a pool.
Yeah.
So what other pools are in the neighborhood? Is it like one out of every 20?
I couldn't tell you averages. I mean, I've built pools, not necessarily in this neighborhood. I built one in Carytown. I've built a couple in downtown Ann Arbor. I know they're not as common.
How many pools do you know personally of in this neighborhood?
I couldn't give you a number.
Have you seen one or two?
On satellite, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
No, I can confirm that there's pools in there via satellite, but
Okay.
in terms of actual stuff like setbacks, and I can look at it and see that, you know, a lot of people have rear yards, and that's helping them obviously be able to get a pool.
Okay.
But
Thank you, sir.
Dave?
So I see in the notes here that part of this will include a 4-foot aluminum fence.
Correct.
Around the pool. Is that for safety concerns? I know that there's
Correct.
always concern for children straying into pools.
Yeah, yeah, and
That's a state requirement. Or-
that's, yes, correct. But the fence is not part of the variance. The fence is zoning compliant,
Okay,
as is.
okay. I just wanted to emphasize that that's something that is part and parcel of the safety requirements.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I was going to ask our staff person later if that fence was compliant, but you've answered that.
Yeah, that's compliant.
That's state of Michigan building code requirement for a fence to have a barrier of 4 feet.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add to that, this pool, if this was a normal situation where it was in the rear yard, it would be a project by right. It's just because this is in a front yard.
Right, I understand.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you
Can I
much.
add one thing to that?
Yeah.
And just to carry on from what John just said, I think you just highlighted the great example of why there are these ZBAs, to consider these unique circumstances and help find solutions for, you know, people that live within your city. So please take that into consideration, and that's all I got for you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Opening the public hearing now. If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, now is your chance. If anyone here is present that wishes to speak, please come forward. If you're accessing the meeting remotely, please press star 9 or use the raise hand feature.
We don't have any hands raised.
All right, thank you. With that, the public hearing is closed and we are in discussion. Todd?
I guess I'm it today, leading off anyway. So part of me would really like to approve this project. It looks like a very elegant pool. It's a lovely home. It's in a lovely neighborhood. But unlike additions to help people age in a home that might crimp into a setback, a pool isn't a necessity. And it's a wonderful home as is. And one of the criteria is that it's, you know, this will allow the minimum use of the property. Often that, typically in the strictest sense, this is ignored because people are living in their homes already. But a pool is a luxury. And I'm happy, even though a part of me emotionally would say, this is great, it's going to make the house look great. But it just is a unique piece of property, which they knew when they bought, because it has all these front yards. It's on a lovely curve, but the curve is also a problem. I think on balance, I'm leaning against it, but I'd really like to hear from other people if they're getting to have the same conflict.
Can I
that
add
do.
something before you guys go through?
Nope, sorry, we're in discussion. Dharma?
I'm completely comfortable supporting this. As John pointed out, it would be allowed by right if it weren't for the fact of them having this unique 3 front yards situation. I think for all practical purposes, a lot of people would view this as a backyard. The orientation of the house with respect to this, it's very clear that they're building the smallest pool possible. I mean, they're not even building it out as much as they could to kind of be the by right backyard. So I don't really think it's for us to assess whether a pool is a luxury if it's a permitted use in a neighborhood. So I will support this.
I'll just briefly say that I tend to agree with your points, Dharma, and I think they have made an effort to make it the minimum necessary. I think there's a lot of constraints here with it being a pool, not being able to put it any closer to the house itself, having the issue with the grade change out the back of the house. I think they've done a good job here with complying as best they can, and it is unique to see a lot that has 3 front yards. So I'm also inclined to support this. Dave?
Well, I'll vote for this, and everybody, as we've seen with these 100-degree days all across the country, I think more and more people are going to be looking to these pools as another option for cooling rather than sitting in your air-conditioned house. And I think it's a very modest. Years ago, I asked for a variance for a front porch, and I was coached by my architect to ask for the minimum you need, and I feel like you've done that here. So I'm happy to support this. And I'd be willing to make a motion if there's no other comments.
Is there any other discussion, or are we ready? I think we're ready, Dave. Thank you.
ZBA 24-0022, 618 Stratford Drive. In accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants a 10-foot variance from Section 5.18.5, averaging an established front building line requirement of 40 feet. The variance allows for construction of an in-ground pool located 30 feet from the front property line along Hill Street and Avon Road. The pool is to be constructed per the submitted plans.
A motion, do I have support? Thank you, Dharma. Dave?
DeVarty, yes.
Todd?
Yes, I appreciate Dharma's comment.
I also vote yes. Dharma?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
The request is granted. Moving on to petition ZBA 24-0023, 2845 South State Street. I'm going to step out, and Todd is going to take over.
Thank you, guys.
This is the big one.
Let's go.
Okay, calling petition number 24-1120, ZBA 24-0023, 2845 South State Street. And city staff, John.
So, Mr. Colbert, did you want to move forward with the presentation this evening? As I expressed earlier, you are aware, if you do move forward, you have to get 5 affirmative out of 5 to be successful with the variance request.
Yep, so can I ask a couple of follow-up questions? So
You can, and I'll do my best to answer them.
would we have the public hearing here tonight and then postpone action until next meeting, or would we postpone the public hearing till the next meeting?
That's a very good question. What we would do is, if you request a postponement, I believe the board would vote on the postponement being granted or not, and then we would have a public hearing, since it's been already advertised, and we could, and then if there was anyone either in the audience or on the phone, they would comment, and then we would move to a public hearing. I mean, a postponement, and you'd be on the next month.
And at the next meeting, would we have another public hearing?
Yes. Just the same as the first case. They postponed, requested postponement, and we still had the public hearing tonight.
Sure. Would the board here want the presentation tonight or at the next meeting?
Pardon me?
Would the board want the presentation tonight or at the next meeting?
next meeting. If you're going to postpone it, we wouldn't do the presentation.
Okay. So I'm not a gambler, and I'm not, I mean, I appreciate the odds we have here tonight, but we'd like to postpone then until the next meeting.
Okay.
I'll go get Candace. We're done.
So we have to make a motion.
No, someone has to make a motion.
I move to
Right.
postpone this to next meeting.
Support?
Support.
All in favor of postponing until July? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone against? It is postponed, sir.
And then we would still have a public hearing.
Yep,
Yeah. So we're going to see if there are any comments from anyone present here
Understood.
and calling in.
see none.
Anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this? Any callers? Okay, all right. In that case, the public hearing is closed in this matter, and we will see this issue in July. And I will go get Candace.
Sounds good.
I brought my stuff over. And my little name tag. I know who I am.
All right, moving on to unfinished business, we have none. New business, alteration to a non-conforming structure proposed text amendment, draft. John?
So, the zoning board of appeals requested that staff move forward with a text amendment to change the way we do alterations to non-conforming structures, section 5.32.2 in the code, to allow for residential structures that are going to be doing interior alterations to create new habitable space in the basement or attic, to allow that to be staff approved by a building permit. And so, over the months, a former member who's no longer with us, but I believe it was pretty much a consensus that we address that. And so I, myself wrote, and senior planner Alexis DeLeo, we wrote a ordinance amendment, and you can see the memo before us. Scope of changes, the proposed changes will allow an alteration to a non-conforming structure if the alteration does not extend closer to a lot line, it does not create any new nonconformities for the property, and it complies with the district height, setback, and all other dimensional standards. Lastly, the alteration is required to comply with all the building code requirements. So what you're being asked for tonight is to propose a motion, which I have on the back of this sheet, for that alteration to a nonconforming structure to move forward to the working session for the planning commission and ultimately the planning commission.
I have a problem with the language in the last paragraph.
Okay.
It's a little ambiguous, I think. So I look at these non-conforming, as you put it, that if it's just dealing with interior renovations and the envelope of the building is not changing, then that will slide through. But the words that begin and complies with district height, setback, and all other dimensional standards doesn't apply because these are non-conforming.
The first sentence says the proposed changes will allow an alteration to a nonconforming structure if the alteration does not extend closer to a lot line.
Correct.
So they
But then it
can't,
also says, and complies with, the words that begin, and complies with the district height, et cetera,
Height.
is inconsistent with the first clause. What it should say is, the proposed changes will attach will allow an alteration to a non-conforming structure if the alteration does not change the building's envelope. they don't comply with the setback and dimension standards because by definition, they're non-conforming. Am I not being clear?
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
I mean, I think it would be simply put by saying if you're just looking at internal changes, it's okay. It'll slide through. It always does. But if you're going to
But
pop out on one of the sides, then it's going to be a problem.
let me take a step back, because there are also alterations in non-conforming structures that can be an addition that don't go any closer to a lot line.
Okay.
Also would have to comply with the setbacks, the height district in the set. So I may have misspoken, I apologize.
Well, you don't need
It's
to
not,
apologize.
no, it's just it doesn't have to be all interior, because there can be some additions. We've had those that were less than the existing non-conforming
Okay,
status.
so then we should say is either that there's no changes to the envelope, or if there is, that these
If
comply
all
with
additions
current
must,
setback
all
lines.
additions must comply with those.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that more clear?
Yes, I
Okay.
agree.
I don't mean to be quibble.
No, I know.
But this is going to be a standard
Right,
that we'll look
yep.
at.
Yep, so I will add that into the language, that.
Okay, I'd like to
And-
see the revision before. we
Okay.
approve it.
All right, so I'll say that all additions, yep, must comply with the district height setback and all. Yep.
You might be clear?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it was just a
understand
little
that.
ambiguous,
Yep, no,
because
I under-
non-conforming by definition means it doesn't
I'm
conform.
glad you brought that up, and that's why we're doing this tonight. This is kind of like our little working
No,
session.
I know what you meant, but this
Yeah.
clarifies it.
Yep.
When we're long gone, people will understand what we meant.
I have two questions. One is procedural and one is based on the substance. I guess first of all, the procedural one. So wouldn't we, it says the Zoning Board of Appeals recommends that the Planning Commission, that's our motion, consider modifications. And I know Planning Commission operates differently than other of the commissions that we have, but wouldn't we be instructing City Council to ask Planning Commission to do this, or can it just bypass? And then it would just ultimately come to us once Planning Commission comes up with.
Yeah, why wouldn't it go to you, Darma?
I think it has to go to both. It goes to planning commission and then to council.
Yes, it would.
I understand that
Yeah.
order, but, okay. So zoning, I guess what I'm asking is Zoning Board of Appeals can ask things of another commission. Normally, that doesn't happen.
Well, they're just recommending that the planning commission take this under consideration. That's what the motion says.
I understand. Typically, we don't, we would never have the transportation make a recommendation to, you know what I'm
But
saying?
this board has the ability
Okay.
to do that.
Okay, that was my question.
You have,
Okay.
you have the ability to propose text amendments
Okay.
to the Unified Development
Thank you.
Code.
That's
Yep,
helpful.
because we've done that in the past with
Okay.
Dave's front porch text amendment.
Okay, cool.
And then I did one for the mobile food vending services.
Okay.
But you do have that.
Okay,
You do have
cool.
that.
All right, this is kind of
ability- you do
technical.
have that
I know
ability.
ultimately it goes to city council, so I understand that.
Yep.
And then the other question is, it was interesting, the thing that got postponed tonight, because it was a variance to TC1, and I know that we know, automatically, we're going to have a ton of non-conforming properties. Could you walk us through what would be in and out of scope were we to pass this for having to come to ZBA versus being able to be a staff amendment?
So this text amendment only addresses residential properties.
Oh, it does?
It does not
Okay.
address non-residential.
TC1's not considered residential? I guess R, it's not
No,
R.
It's a mixed-use district.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Dave, did you have a question or comment?
Well, kind of. I want to think this through a little bit. I'd kind of like us to, some packages can come in and not, part of the building might be non-conforming with regard to a lot line, but the addition they're proposing might be adding to part of the building that isn't closer, but the building itself is not getting closer to the lot line, the whole building in its entirety, just the part that they're adding to. Do you see what I'm saying? So
if the building, if the addition is getting closer to a lot line, that would require a variance.
but it's not getting closer than the building already is. So part of the building is already closer to the lot line.
So any addition could not increase the nonconformity. So any addition would have to go right up to that, where that building it currently sits, or less than.
Okay. But it is increasing the nonconformity in a sense,
By-
It's not.
by
adding
by-
more.
by area
By more
and
building
volume,
volume that is in
But
non-conformity.
it's not, it
So I'm
could-
not sure I'm there yet to give that to staff, because there could be
But-
some really big
Well, we've been.
things that should come to us. But if it's totally interior, if it's not, if it's something that is not like, I'm just worried, you've got a
Well-
building with like a tiny bit of the front of it extends into the thing by a foot or two. So, and they want to add 10 or 15 feet to the rear end of the building for the 40 feet of depth of the building, and they want to bring that out to be consistent with the front. But then you've got that whole length of the building is becoming part of the nonconformity.
And we as a board have been approving those as alterations.
True, for the most part.
Yep. No, well, probably about 99%.
90, right.
Yep. And so we've been approving additions to allow extra area, but they still have to meet the district setbacks and height and all the requirements of the district. They just can't increase that nonconformity. So if they did 1 inch closer, that would require the variance, and I would not be able to do that as a staff level approval.
Okay. And we're going to look at this again. Where are we going to consider this tonight?
Well, I'm going to bring these notes and these comments to the planning manager,
Okay.
and then we'll see if we have to we'll bring it back next month.
I'd just like a month to think about this.
Okay.
And
Okay. So you're not going to,
I'm not saying
You're-
where I am.
yep.
For.
Well, I'm just saying tonight.
I just want to think. it
I'm
through.
getting the feeling that tonight no one's comfortable with proposing a motion to move forward to the planning commission.
But I think the.
Not
court-
yet.
Not yet.
But I think it's an important thing to move to the planning commission, because I'd like to see most, if not all, of the alterations go to just staff approval. But
Residential.
residential.
Yes.
But I just want to think it through, because
Okay.
certainly most of them should go without question, but there may be some that I would have a problem with. And I want to think through what the parameters are that would, and, it may be a minority position to just say, oh, there are these few that I would still like us to go, to be able to look at as a zoning board, but
So I'm going to ask.
I
you-
want to think about that.
So I'm going to ask you over the next month, as you think of different scenarios, if you could email those to me. And then I'll bring those to the board next month.
Okay.
Any comments or concerns you have about this during the next 2 weeks, please write them down, email them to me, so we can bring them to the next month, so I can address them.
I'll
And
be
then we
able
can
to
bring it
look
next
through
month.
2 weeks.
I think all of us, though, I mean, Dave, everybody's agreed that if it's just an internal rearrangement, we don't
Yes.
want to see it.
Right.
Right?
I'm
Yeah.
totally on board.
Yeah, I agree. So we're
So I
agreed that
have
internal only.
interior only, and I have exclamation points
Yeah, interior, we don't want to see it.
Dharma,
for residential
for
properties.
residential
Correct.
properties.
We're not making decisions here, though, are we? Like, I don't want to prematurely strip
No.
this down.
No,
Okay.
because if
No.
we're
Okay.
gonna, this
No-
is kind of
no
like
decisions.
this is a
Just-
working session, and I'm gonna make some changes and some modifications, and then I'll bring it back next month, it sounds like to me right now. Because if I can't get a motion tonight, then I have to bring it back next month.
But let's say that you get comments and you incorporate them, and then some of us think that we're being too restrictive in it. We could make an amendment at the table.
True.
We can make a motion for an amendment. I'm just saying that, like, you don't really know what kind of consensus you have right now. This
No,
is
I
a
don't.
discussion.
Yep.
And, yeah.
There may be consensus.
There may be consensus.
I mean, I'm bored. I feel like we're just wordsmithing language. Like, your question to me was just about having a common understanding about the
Yeah,
consistency of the
clarifying
language.
Precisely what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would like to just make sure I understand the use cases, but that's really it. So for my part, I just want to chime in and say that.
You guys are the ones that requested this, so
Yes,
I'm doing your
for-
work.
I'm for it
Yep.
conceptually.
Yep.
I'm just trying to visualize some situations that the way this is worded and presented there may be a handful, even though most should
That's fine.
go to staff, there may be a handful that
We have time.
feel like.
And I feel a lot more comfortable with time now that the former board member is no longer here, is really pushing me for it. Because we're gonna move forward with it, but they were requesting it be done more expeditiously. Yeah,
Pressure's off.
so, we want to get it right. We want to do it, but we want to get it right, and then I want a consensus and ultimately the motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the interior one, I think, is obvious because the single standard is it's going to have a negative impact on the neighborhood. And if you're talking only about interior changes in a building that nobody's seen, you can think of some situations where there might be an impact, like a few more cars, but basically there's not an impact on the neighborhood. It's all happening inside a building.
Okay, so here's another question. The way this is worded, if you could, if, let's say there was a piece of the side of the house that was within a setback, but not all of that, you could build out that entire side to where the existing,
We'll say the side setback, required side setback is 5 feet, and the house currently sits at 4 feet 10 inches. So
Right.
it's a 2-inch
but-
encroachment to make it non-conforming.
so then you could build that entire side of the house.
The new addition.
Out that. But let's say by right, you could go back 20 feet without a variance in the rear, but there is nothing back there. Does that also include that 20 feet in the rear?
Well, the acceptable language that I propose
it's-
is that any expansion of the envelope would correspond to current setback requirements.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so you could expand the envelope in that direction
You
without
can, you
variance.
can make an addition to the structure as long as it meets the district requirements.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if they came forward and said, I want to, you know.
I mean,
I have
that'd be
to
a by right, that'd be a by right addition.
Right.
Hey, my
I mean, they could-
my existing structure is non-conforming, but I want to build an addition to it, and it meets everything in the code. Well, then,
Right.
yeah.
But they could come back, they could come and do that, the rear addition.
They do that, yeah, they can do
without
that
the
now.
variance,
Cor-
right.
or- without even coming to the
But
ZBA
if
for
they want to do
alteration.
the side thing in addition.
If they want
In
to,
that
if they
example.
want to build to the exact same 4-foot 10-inch plane along that, right now, that has to come to the ZBA for approval. But if we pass this where the addition can still be built and meet, and is built along the same plane, that 4 feet 10 inches, how I was writing it, the addition doesn't require ZBA approval either. It's done by right
So there
with a
There
building
are
permit.
houses in the city that are built almost to the lot line. Like not to a side lot line. And
Okay.
I've seen that. In fact, there was that addition on wherever, Morton or Granger, with the two families that were feuding several years ago, where they built an addition and it actually went a little bit over the lot line. So there are houses that come up to the lot line, part of the house does. So if we pass this, would we be saying they could have the whatever addition they put on the rear, or however much of an addition of new envelope they put on, it could all go up to the lot line with your approval?
It depends on how you want to word this. Do you want the additions to have to meet the district requirements, or do you want the addition can be built to the existing nonconformity?
I would vote for the former, because in the long run, nonconformities are supposed to disappear, and so you're not supposed to aggravate, so to speak, a nonconformity.
So, so you don't want this to, what I'm gathering is you don't want this to apply to additions, you still want additions to come to the board.
No.
It could go either
They would-
way.
they
but
would
I'm just
come to the
saying that
board
if you
still,
think
just like
of
they are now.
Yeah, nonconformities is eventually supposed to be disappear.
Because we have been as a board approving those, even though there's,
Well, let
but
me
you
see it
still,
then.
you still want to see them.
Well, if we've been approving them all, then I'll stand corrected. I don't want to see them. I mean, well, it's not just my time. My time is free, but I'm glad to do this. But people have to do an architectural site plan, single line schematics. go through the whole thing, the project is delayed, it's a big effort. So if we can make it
There's-
simpler in a case we're going to approve it anyway, then we ought to do it. I'll stand corrected and say then.
That's
yeah.
where we were at, right
Yeah,
there. Yep.
no, I'll go, I stand corrected. Yeah.
I'll definitely get back to you within 2 weeks.
All right. Chew on it for a little while and let me know. You guys reach out to me during the month. We don't only have to talk once a month. We can talk all the time.
Fourth Wednesdays.
I'll send you all my stuff.
Every morning.
Well, I didn't say that.
What's your personal cell phone? Let's get it on the record right here.
All right, so we'll spend a few weeks digesting these proposed changes, and then we'll look forward to seeing this again in July. All right. Next item under new business, reports from council. Dharma, anything new?
I think the only thing to report is that we passed the PUD, was it a PUD? Yeah, PUD for Five Corners, which is at Packard State, I forget the other road that it's at. So we had the final public hearing and reading 2 meetings ago, and it was passed. That's it.
And just for additional information, I'll let you know that board member Chris Madigan resigned today. So I just found out at 10 o'clock. So that's why, the numbers, and then board member Gluzak couldn't make it either. And we're short 2 with Sadira Clark and Grace Whitney. So that's why there was kind of a scramble with the attendance tonight, but it was kind of completely out of my control.
Well, that means in a month from now, we have the same number of people, 6, and you'll recuse yourself, it'll be 5.
Well, if Christina's here.
If Christina's
There'll
here,
be
we'll have
6.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep.
It takes 2 meetings to get a new member, 2 council meetings.
I'm working on it. We have a very
Well, it was too bad.
small number of applicants.
So if
I've
anyone
reached out to
watching
3 or
wants
4.
to be on ZBA, please
Or
submit your
If
application.
any of you know
We just need
people
to-
that want to be on the board, they have to be an Ann Arbor resident.
Alex Milchine.
City of Ann Arbor resident.
They have to be a City of Ann Arbor resident, and
I
they
think
need
Alex
to
is.
make an application through our city clerk's office.
Oh, I thought they had to be on the voting rolls too. But anyway,
No,
consider it.
No,
you have to be,
just a city
you
resident.
have to be a city resident and make an application via the clerk's office.
Well, it's too bad Chris resigned.
So that's all I have.
All right, communications, we had none. Public comment. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to address the ZBA on any item, now's your chance. Please press *9 to, if accessing by phone, or use the raise hand feature if accessing online.
At this time, we don't have any raised hands.
All right, thank you. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Dharma. Support?
Support.
From Todd, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.